Welcome everyone to BC's Offbeat Bass Gear. I am BC, and today we're going to do part 2 of the 30-year-old shootout. The first part focused on bass guitars under $500, which would be $1,000 today. Today we're going to look at 410 bass cabinets under $1,000, which adjusted for inflation would be about $2,000. One of the reasons I picked this sort of 30-year time frame is it was easy to do the math. 1995, 1996 prices are roughly double as of 2026. And I thought this would be fun to do because I kind of got tired of all of the Iris Goo Goo Dolls flashback videos. Where were you in 1996 if you're a B or C list celebrity? So this is sort of fun. I hope you enjoy it. We have the lovely and talented Michael Anthony on the front cover wearing his very attractive Scottish pattern plaid Bermuda shorts with, I don't know, Timberlands and socks. Can't get enough of that. Snarling dogs. Apparently they were giving away a bike if you bought a Seiko tuner. Michael Anthony now playing right before he got booted from Van Halen, as I recall. The Hartke Generation MX, which is the paper cone speakers, because by now people were starting to shatter the drivers in the aluminum cone Hartkes. Carvin, and everybody misses Carvin. I think all of us were like me. Christmas morning was when the Carvin catalog came in and we could all look at it and drool. These are awesome Carvin basses. I'd like to pick one of these up at some point, but that's for a future day. Tim Cross from Sponge. If you remember Sponge, they did Molly and Plowed. Good songs. Shanghai Showtime with somebody named Chubby Jackson. I'm guessing Chubby is gone. The Slow Wounds from D'Addario, which were a thing back then and never really caught on. It was like D'Addario's answer to half wounds or pressure wounds. And here we have Tom Hamilton with a rack of the Hartke aluminum cone speakers. All of these, I'm sure, were shattered at some point throughout the tour. Aria basses, the Gale & Kruger, which is still being made, still a classic. Some other fun stuff. Cuban upright and electric basses. This was a profile piece on Cuban basses, one of them playing a Steinberger, which is kind of cool. The Musicians Institute. Leyland Sklar playing a 5-string acoustic Epiphone that I'm sure he only played for this ad. The Michael Anthony feature piece. The PV TKO series, which I have a few of actually because they're cheap and I like them. Bass lines, you guys remember these pickups with the little dip switches on the pickups. They were the thing until you started to sweat on a gig. You then had that leach down and corrode the switches. So that kind of faded. Ooh, the classic, I got to get this one in here. The Sansamp bass driver, still being made by Tech 21, still in business today. And the part we're all waiting for, Ken Smith, still made in beautiful percussy. Ooh, John Patitucci ad. Some other fun stuff. And the Stack Attack. So I actually used this magazine because at the time I was looking to buy a 410, and the 410 was the thing to have really in the early 90s through early 2000s. 10 4x10s under $1,000. That would be $2,000 today. Let's see what we have. And I actually used this to buy something, so I'll sort of speak to that. Right out of the gate, we have a Carvin V410T and a PV410TX. And in the interest of full disclosure, these were the two cabinets I was torn between. We had the 369 V210T from Carvin. Now keep in mind, that was $369 shipped. So double that today. It's still a great value. It would have been like, essentially $750. But you had to pay the shipping, and you couldn't test drive it. And the PV410TX, which I did buy. And you see the little ratings in the corner. Construction, components, portability, it was a nightmarish 90 pounds. It was not portable. I agree with that rating. First thing I did was drill some holes and put on some casters, but I thought it sounded great. I still have it, as a matter of fact. It's a little road worn. It survived a bunch of gigs. It did not survive my cats, who managed to strip most of the Tolex carpeting off it, so I have to recover it, because that's just what cats do. This is sort of an interesting one. It's the Hartke MX-10. Essentially, this was more at the top end, $700, so it would have been about $1,400 today. It's a 300-watt cabinet, which most of them are. It's 410s with an aluminum cone tweeter in the center of it. So even now, Hartke was starting to move away from the aluminum drivers because they were breaking. There were people who were gigging a lot with them. They paid a lot of money for them, and they were shattering. And that's just the reality of the early sort of aluminum speakers. A great idea that just did not hold up. The Ampeg 410HE. I remember playing through one of these in beautiful Magden Music up near the Scranton area in PA. You just could not get... I don't know if it's because it did not have a tweeter. It did not do an SVT sound very well, and it didn't sound really modern. We have the Mesa Boogie 410 Basis. This thing was built for road duty. It came with the whole sort of aluminum frame, almost like an anvil case with the casters. And it was more at the top end. It also had the highest, it was rated at 600 watts, which even for basses at the time was really a lot. It was actually heavier than the PV, but really a great cabinet. Just really hard to find, because if you think about it, back in the 90s, Mesa was really a boutique builder. It was not considered sort of run-of-the-mill big producer of amps. It was really kind of niche. It was one of the earliest. And even then, it was kind of roadworthy and road-focused. You see it's got the sort of pop-out casters ready to go on that one. I think probably one of the best-sounding cabinets here is the Jens-Benz. These things were really pricey. They were hard to find. It's difficult to see in the video here. But in addition to the 410s with the tweeter and a crossover, it had 4 front-loaded ports on this. And it was really sort of... The Jens-Benz was probably the best you could sort of get at that point. There's a couple others here I'll talk about that were comparable. But those 4 front-firing ports really gave it a lot of voicing for the deep end too, which was kind of nice. We had the Marshall 7041. Marshall was trying to sort of get into the bass business at the time, and they even made a 410 guitar cabinet. It just really did not... I think the problem with these is they had this little 1-inch tweeter in this thing that was just overpowered by the 410s, and it just really didn't cut it. And it was pretty pricey too. These were made in England, and they were $900. It'd be like $1,800 today. The most expensive one in here is, I think, this thing, the Bullfrog C410T. I have never come across this. It sounds really neat, actually. I mean, it really sounds like it was well thought out. They have aluminum cone speakers, a bullet tweeter, which is a nice feature. They had 2 1/4-inch jacks on this, which is kind of cool. Cut something out there. But, like I said, I never heard one of these. And the 2 that people, I think, most often had were these 2. If you really wanted to invest in your rig, it was the Eden 410 and the Goliath. They were the 2 that everybody kind of had. The Eden 410 and the Goliath. They were both pretty close. They were both at the top end of the range, $1,000 each, which you could get them for about $850, $925, but retail was not that different than really what you paid at the time. I remember people who had these things, the first thing you had to do with them was put casters on them because they really just vibrated the whole stage. But these were really kind of the 2 state-of-the-art cabinets. I did a lot of twin bills with different bass players on gigs that either had the SWR or the Eden. I thought my PV held up pretty close to them. Especially, I was using a 5-string at the time. I think the top end was a little better on these guys, but that really wasn't as much of a consideration. And then here's sort of the closing photo of the entire rig in all its beautiful glory with all the basses they tested it with. So what are the takeaways from this? One of the things I think is really interesting is this. With the exception of the Marshall, obviously because the Marshall is an iconic British brand, all of these cabinets are American-made. As much as we talk about American-made instruments from the 1990s and the 80s, I did an earlier video about basses, and basses at a similar price point were mainly foreign-made. But at this point, all the cabinets were, in fact, USA-made. They're all 410s. Generally speaking, they all had tweeters. And I think that's the big significant difference. That you go back 30 years and cabinets and amps were really overwhelmingly still made in the United States. You still had the legacy brands, Carvin, Peavey. All of them were making cabinets and they were making heads. And sadly, that is long gone. But I think it's sort of interesting to see. Now, at the same time, you have to be cognizant of the fact that if you double the price of these, you can probably get some American-made cabinets in the $2,000 price range. Also, I think you have to keep in mind that the whole bass amplification world has changed a lot. Right now, people are playing smaller twin 10 or single 12 combos. A lot of them are using the smaller sort of Class D heads that push an awful lot of wattage through speakers that are much more efficient than what we had. So while I do love the sound of my 410, I think technology has sort of left a lot of this behind. In fact, you can get these sounds out of a small sort of lunchbox sized bass head through a 210 cabinet, and there's any number of smaller cabinets even so, or a 112 combo. So I think there's something to be said for how a 410 projects versus those smaller combos. But at the same time, keep in mind, even back then when we were gigging, we were all running direct. We were using the cabinets as an on-stage monitor, essentially, with everything going direct into the board. So if you can get the same level of volume, the same articulation, and the same sort of tonal range out of a 210 with a really small head, why not? But I do think it's worth noticing that, we really did have a lot of manufacturers that were all US based, all making really, really, really good equipment. But if you look, they're all pretty much the same. Yes, this was a shootout of 410 cabinets, but by and large, everybody had 410 with a tweeter, which was kind of the design of the day. Nobody did anything particularly different. But having said that, I think it's really sort of interesting to look at all this stuff and just get a sense of where we were 30 years ago and to compare this to the ideas we have in our mind. Maybe we idealized some of this stuff, maybe it changed, or maybe our memories are pretty close to the reality. So I hope you all enjoyed this. I am BC. This is BC for BC's Offbeat Bass Gear. If you liked this, if you hated this, if you liked me, you hated me, if you've got other ideas for videos, throw all of it in the comments. I really want to thank all of you for sitting through all of this today. I want you to all stay safe and have a good day. This is BC, and thanks for being here.